This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to the ASCDI, another in our continuing sessions of webinars. I want to let you know, we had about 50 people or so register for today. A lot of times people register from outside this time zone, from Asia and Europe, and we are going to be recording this and we'll play it back, and so everybody will get a copy. But we want to thank you folks who've joined us live today. We don't have that many people that if you would like to turn on your cameras and your mics, feel free to do so. We can make it a little bit more interactive. But we really do have a great session today. Thanks largely to XSI, who's sharing what I call their secret sauce. XSI is really an exemplary member of ASCDI because they came forward to us. They said, we found something that really has helped grow our business in the last couple of years. We want to share it with the other members. So XSI came to us today. Before we get into the actual topic of today, I wanted to introduce our sponsors. First, we have Circle IT. Is David on with us? Okay, let me jump over to Bill. Bill Blagan from IQ Resale. Bill, welcome. Thank you for sponsoring. Thank you for being a member of ASCDI.
Sure. Hey, thanks. Good to be here. Good work on that New York bill that was passed. I think that helps keep us all in business. A little bit about IQ Reseller. We've been around for 20 years. We're just by number of users and customers, the #1 global ERP platform for IT resellers and ITAD professionals. We've been doing this for over 20 years. We're doing something right. We were bought out by private equity about 19 months ago. And since then, we've grown our revenue, recurring revenue, 27% last year, and we're approaching 30% this year. We make people more efficient. Whoops, there's my cell phone. We make people more efficient by just doing a lot of automations in the software and things that are really specific to the industry that are too numerous to talk about. So we got a special ASCDI member package going on right now. The first 5 people that go to demo.iqreseller.com and just sign up for a demo, if they end up going through the sales process and decide to sign up, they can use our no obligation implementation plan, which means you can actually implement for free, and you'll pay us only after you're up and running, after 60 days, 90 days. And if for some reason you're not happy with the software, you don't have to pay us a dime, and we'll spend all the resources getting you up and running. That includes custom reports, all the other custom things, and that'll be for the first 5 demos that people go to demo.iqreseller.com. If you don't need it, you can go to referral.iqreseller.com and refer other people, and if they accept the referral, you'll get 36 months of revenue from the subscription fees that they pay over that point in time. So anyway, if you don't know about IQ Reseller, just get a demo and you'll get filled in. Thanks.
Bill, thank you. By the way, Bill was referencing a bill that was just passed in New York State, the right to repair bill. We've been working on that right to repair along with the repair.org folks for a lot of years, and this is the first state in the United States that's passed a right to repair bill, hopefully guaranteeing resellers the right to software parts and the kind of things you need to put equipment back into productive use. So hats off to repair.org and everybody that worked so hard on getting that done. And Bill, thanks for mentioning that. Well, another one of our sponsors today is WipeDrive. WipeDrive's not here, but I found out just before this call that I should have changed that to Blanco. WipeDrive was sold yesterday to Blanco. So hats off to WipeDrive. And our final sponsor who is here today is Neil Ville from World Data. Neil, take it away.
Good, thanks, Joe. Congrats to WipeDrive. A lot of consolidation going on in our various areas of industry, so it's interesting to see that. Pretty exciting. World Data Products, we're proud to be a sponsor of this event and a long-term member of ASCDI. This is World Data's 35th year in business, which we're very excited about. We're primarily an independent hardware reseller in both the broker and end user markets. We also buy, refurbish, and resell servers, networking gear, and related components for brands such as Cisco, Arista, Dell, HP, and IBM. We have a repair service business going down to the board level that we offer to third-party maintenance companies, brokers, and end users. We have a certified tape media business. We also offer data center services, things like audits, decommissioning, and ITAD-like services. We're ISO 9001 certified. We're also pursuing an R2V3 certification and expect to complete that process later this year. So looking forward to an informative session, and thanks very much for the commercial time, Joe.
Thank you, Neil. And thanks for your support of ASCDI. We really appreciate it. So again, today's session, we're going to talk a little bit about XSI's secret sauce, if you will. And we have three really good speakers today. First is the chief cook and bottle washer at XSI, Dan. So Dan, let me, and then we'll have Kiera going and then Noah. But Dan, let me start with you. Take it away, please. Tell us a little bit about XSI and why this is such a secret sauce to you.
Thank you. And I like that chef hat. I am actually an amateur chef. I like to eat, so I like to cook. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you to the sponsors. It's great to see everyone who is supporting the ASCDI. I'm fairly new to XSI and to ASCDI. And I have to tell you, I've become a fan extremely fast to both, and grateful to be here. So for those of you who are attending or listening to this, thank you as well for attending and listening to this. Quick highlight of XSI. We are a third-party maintenance company, a global, I could say that today, a global third-party maintenance company, and we also provide professional services globally. So data center relocations, smart hands, staff augmentation, and ITAD program globally. We're headquartered out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm happy to be here. I run global services, so professional services and all those business units report up to me, and I have the pleasure to run those. So I'm going to really talk for a very short period of time before I hand it over to Kiera Walker, who's our director for EMEA and APAC. And I really just want to share three main points with you that hopefully would enrich you and inspire you and encourage you to expand globally. And so I want to just talk quickly about why did XSI go global? Why did we expand globally? What was that initiative? I'm going to talk about how we went global. This is where you'll get a taste of that secret sauce, if you will. And I'd like to share what came of it, right? What are the results of the efforts of the past 18 to 24 months for us, and what were those results? So I'll start with why, right? Why did we at XSI want to expand globally? When I came over to XSI through an M&A, I ran and started a company called Piontech, and we were already doing business in about 90 countries. And XSI dominated and had a strong foothold in Latin America for ITAD services and maintenance, and in the U.S. market, but we really didn't have a significant amount of reach into EMEA and APAC, and we really were looking at those areas because the customer demanded it. And those of you listening or on the call, you probably have opportunities, RFPs, customers who are demanding, hey, could you provide your service? Could you send your product over to this part of the world, this country, this region? And oftentimes we tend to walk away from that business, or are not in a position to be competitive, to even go after that business to win it. And so, that was our challenge. And that was our problem that we wanted to fix. And expanding globally and becoming a true global provider of our services and products was a top priority. And the overall outcome we wanted to seek was growth, right? We're growth-minded business owners, and business owner, not just a company, but owning your own vertical that you're leading within the company. And we wanted to expand it. And, we looked at expanding it globally. And there's really two strategies, in my opinion, right, to really grow your revenue, right? We talk about growth, we're talking about revenue. And you can grow it by penetrating new accounts, right? Go after new customers, marketing campaigns all day long. Let's go knock on doors. Let's get new business, right? That's one of the strategies. And the other one, which I favor, is expand your services, expand your reach to your existing customers, right? Because penetrating accounts, as many of you know, is very difficult. That's probably the most difficult way to grow your revenue. is to, get your way into new customers, especially enterprise customers. It's a challenge because they're getting 100 emails a day, those decision makers. I get 100 emails a day from people who want our business. So, what's important is that, for us strategically, we wanted to expand deeper into the global markets is because of the latter one. We wanted to grow through, selling to our existing customers more services in more regions of the world. So that was pretty much why we really wanted to go deeper into the global markets. And so then the next question is once we understand, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? Why are we doing this? We want to grow. Customers have a demand. We see the RFPs. We want to be able to compete. How do we do it? Right? How do we get ourselves to where we are and expand in a way that is strong and competitive? And so the first thing that I did, excuse me, is we have to pick our market, right? If you're here today listening, you go, okay, I want to expand my company. I want to grow, right? So, the first thing I would have you do is look at picking what market, what region you want to go after, right? There's 195 countries. Where do you start, right? And so what we did was we really, went to just separating every region in the world and say we're going to reach every region globally, and our expansion will be done regionally. For example, and so we picked our structure as the second thing we did. So we said, look, we want to be truly global. We want to reach the entire globe with our services. And so we have to pick our structure. And the way we structured it was we have LATAM covered. We have businesses registered there, billing and payment systems already registered in multiple countries in LATAM. We have the United States covered. Our weakness was EMEA and APAC. So we looked at separating our structure, and we picked our structure as we're going to have 4 regions globally, and we're going to have LATAM, North America, EMEA, and APAC. And then we're going to empower 3 regional directors to lead those markets for us. And you'll hear from Kiera Walker today, who's our director and leads our EMEA and APAC program here shortly for XSI. And if I'm honest, that's one of our secret sauces. It's actually Kiera Walker, right? She's a tremendous, for those of you that know her, a tremendous expert in those regions and in all services that we provide. And she's going to share some good stuff with you here in a few moments. But our structure was break it down regionally, and then empower subject matter experts in-house to be able to deliver that. And so if you're here today and you go, well, we don't have the capital, we don't have the ability to do that in-house, don't get discouraged, because the next part is there's a structure where you can just localize your services through partnerships. And one of the reasons what I really enjoy what ASCDI is doing is that it empowers us to really find and onboard trusted partners, right? So you can localize anywhere in the world, your services or your products by a trusted downstream partner, which I'm sure many of you do, and be able to expand that in a way that could cover the globe. And that's what we did. We localized our services through partnerships. We have regional directors who manage and oversee those in-house so that we can keep the accountability and keep that trust there. We partner with ASCDI as well to maintain that ability to have remedies if there are issues down the road. But localizing our services, we picked our structure and we picked our market, and we just drove that expansion. So what came of it? So I'm excited in our very first year of going global and, finishing our marketing strategy, updating our websites, updating our marketing campaigns, reaching out to all our customers, telling our story that we're a global, organization that could provide third-party maintenance globally, ITAG globally, other professional services globally. Okay, in the first year, we grew by 28%. Okay, that's 28% of our total revenue of last year came from our global expansion, right? And this year, we're on track to be 52% growth at XSI as a result of taking and expanding our capabilities globally. So, I just want to, thank Joe and ASCDI for the opportunity to tell our story today. Probably there was a few little things in here, but I think the secret sauce really is to it is really what we did internally. Maybe it's not a secret. Maybe I'm sure others know of this strategy, but we actually did it, and I just want to encourage you to do it as well. And if you need any support doing that, XSI is here to do that with you in partnership. And and I just want to say one thing before I hand it over to Kiera or back to Joe, and then Joe can continue to hand it over, is think NOAA and TechX, right? Finding that partnership, downstream, or that partnership to help with the import and the record services to get products in and out of country is another big challenge that partnerships solve. And so there's so many ways today with technology to become a disruptive company, expanding and being a truly global company through strong partnerships, and localize your product and services through those partnerships. So if you need a partner, we're happy to do that. And we appreciate Noah being here, and I know we're going to hear a lot of great things from her. So thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I'm here for any questions. I think we're going to save them at the end, but I do look forward to any questions you have for me. Thank you.
Dan, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Next, I want to bring up Kiera, who's the director of EMEA and APAC for XSI, and then we'll hear from Noah. Kiera, take it away. Kiera, you're muted.
Oh, rookie mistake. Thank you, Noah. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. One of the things I love about my job is that I get to meet people from around the world. It's crazy to me that I'm sitting at my desk and I could be talking to people from China, Denmark, US, wherever you are in the world. You might be thousands of miles away, but you're just seconds away, really. And that's just, to me, it's just kind of mind blowing. And thank God for technology, right? Karen, are you doing the slide for me? Could you move to the next slide? Oh, brilliant. So when I joined XSI, I'm quite new to XSI as well, and new to this webinar group. And my approach was really to understand what our customer and what the market demand is before we look at, which product do we expand into the to APAC and EMEA. So this slide just gives a good demonstration of that. I'm going to think it is a cake. So if you look at the first slice, when our client is identifying and selecting new asset, it's like, how can we support that? We don't sell new equipment, so maybe our remote hands and iMac model could help with the IT inventory, give them a full report of the environment of what they have, so it helps them to decide what equipment they need. Or if they're looking at purchasing or leasing or renting equipment, we could tap into our ITAD services and see what used equipment we have in stock that they could rent for their migration project, whether that's 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. If they required new, we look at resellers. Like the new name I just heard was Nia, right? Maybe Nia, we could be working together when we need new equipment. And when they're looking at deployment, we could assist with configuration, imaging, or asset tagging, and just really getting the equipment ready for it to be relocated or wherever the client needs it to go. One thing that's not listed on here is probably storage, and I know that in the market right now, there is a high demand for storing equipment, whether that's used or new. So we provide that service as well and help our client with that challenge. OEM maintenance and TPM. I'm definitely not a guru on this section, and I know that people on the webinar are, so I'm not going to embarrass myself. And when they ask for data center relocation, that's a product we have to provide, because we could do unracking, uncabling, and help them to install in their new data center. Everything we do at the back of it is ITAD services, whether that's doing break fix and taking out drives that needs destruction, or wipe, or resell, or disposal. ITAD is just at the back of everything. You're doing a refresh project, ITAD's at the back of it. You're doing a reload, ITAD is at, not everything needs to be relocated. So, I believe ITAD is here to stay, and stay for a long time. As long as new equipment is going in, own equipment is definitely needs to go out. And if anything can't be sold to help generate revenue, then recycling and disposal and issuing that certificate of recycling is important to most organizations. So those are the products that we selected and expand into the APAC and EMEA market, because the demand is there. And if you go to the next slide, please, Karen. And this is where we expanded to, and we do this just through partnership. Partner is just as important to us as our customer. Sustainability of our partners and customer goes hand in hand. For us, they're just an extension of our team, of our colleagues. And this isn't, it's always changing when we tell people about our capabilities, because we've got Russia on the list there 4 months ago, but for obvious reasons we cannot service that. And by setting, I think, the right expectation and being realistic into what we could do, really go a long way in terms of we're not over promising and under-delivering to what we can and can do. So there'll be areas within this map that I will say to our client, it's like a traffic light. If I zone it red, like Russia is a no-go zone. If it's amber, we're saying yes, we could cover it, but maybe not within SLA. We just need a bit more time, to help you with that region. And if it's in green, we do it all the time, and that's something we do on a daily basis, and we definitely could do it within SLA. So the key for me is the relationship, or the secret sauce is the relationship we have with our partner, and working with finding new partner that not just see them as partner but as customer as well. I think I'm looking at the names on here, like for example Glenn. Hello Glenn from Denmark. Yes, so Glenn.
Hello, Kiera.
Hi, we just reconnected 2 weeks ago. I needed help with my ITAD services in Denmark, and Glenn needed help with maintenance. So, we swap businesses, and the world is small when you're doing it globally. We have to tap into our strength and use our partners for our weaknesses. And by doing that, the overall goal is that we keep our client and get them not to just spend money on our maintenance services, but also use spending money on other services like professional services that we do. So it's hard to find new clients, right? So we want to keep them. We want them to stay with us. And no one could do it alone. There's no company in the world that can do what they do without partnering up. And that's my session.
Kiera, thank you. Thanks a lot. Next up, I want to bring Noah Sussman. It's been my pleasure to kind of get to know Noah over the last several months. Really interesting, intelligent person who knows more about probably the import-export business than I've ever wanted to know. So, but Noah really, Noah's company, TechX, fills a big gap especially if you're currently or looking to import export products. They fill just a big gap. They solve a big problem that a lot of the members of our association, our industry have. So Noah, let me just turn over to you, please.
Joe, thank you. Firstly, thank you for the very kind words, and thank you as well for both you and Karen and your team for giving us the opportunity and for me to present on this webinar. To echo what Kiera said about, it is nice to be involved in a global world where you are sitting in your home and yet talking to so many different people from around the world. So we are a very new member of ASCDI. And I have to tell you, it's been an absolute privilege and wonderful working with Joe and the team. And it's something we're looking very forward to, continuing and to really growing this partnership. So thank you very much. And yes, as Joe mentioned, and as Dan and Kiera mentioned, is that TechX is involved in the global deployment. I'll start off by giving a high-level overview of what we do, and then go into a little bit of the challenges that companies find, and then kind of tie it all up as to how you can really use a partnership like this to really grow and support you when you kind of move into the global, you want to expand your global footprint. So TechX is involved in the global deployment of IT hardware, networking equipment, and electronics. We do this into over 200 locations worldwide, and we essentially manage the full door-to-door. So our main component is acting as the importer of record, which is the registered entity in the foreign country, with the import licenses, as well as taking care of all the compliance and the complexities, and clearing the goods through customs, paying over all the duties and taxes, and then managing the logistics, the freight on both ends. So picking up the goods anywhere in the world and then delivering them once they're in the foreign country to the end location. And this is all done with one point of contact, and all everything is, upfront lead times, upfront costing. So that's very high level definition of TechX. So just to give you a little bit of the challenges and why TechX is become such an important partner for a lot of partner companies within the IT hardware networking equipment channel, is because as Kiera also mentioned, the world's become very small. A lot of companies are expanding. You have a lot of multinational companies who are either established companies, but they are moving into new locations, or they are startups and really want their product to be available on a global scale. And in order for them to be able to service in a foreign country, they really need to get their equipment there, whether it's in a data center, a remote location, or in just in a sales office. They need to have equipment, and that's where the challenges lie. So what happens is that in order to import into a foreign country, you need to have a registered entity, a local registered tax-paying entity. So with a lot of the multinationals, they either don't have a registered entity, or if they have a registered entity in the foreign country, they don't want the risks that are associated with being what's called the importer of record. They don't actually want their name on the import. So that's the first thing that TechX does, is we take that away, because they'll turn to the reseller, to the VAR, maybe to the OEM or the distributor, and say, we want you to act as the importer of record. But obviously, if the company that they're purchasing the equipment or leasing the equipment from is not present in a foreign country, or even if they are present, they may not have the skills and the licenses and the ability to import, then they are stuck to be able to expand. So this is firstly what where TechX comes in, is that we are the registered entity taking on all the risk in the foreign country. The second obstacle with global deployment is that even if a company has a registered entity, is that when it comes to importing any form of IT hardware or networking equipment, electronics into a foreign country, there's a lot of complexities that are surround and compliance that surround the importing of these products. So depending on the product and depending on the country will determine what licenses are needed, what permits are needed, and whether or not the equipment can even be imported. So, and this really, the reason behind this is because a lot of the equipment ends up, falling into the wrong hands. Maybe it's used, for terrorism, for military, for, for the hacking of other companies. So governments want to really clamp down and regulate the movement of this equipment. And the restrictions, especially with second-hand and refurbished equipment, comes in because of the anti-dumping laws. Is that countries don't want equipment being brought in and then kind of just dumped in a foreign country, in their country. So that's the thing also where we step in with our expertise and we will review the equipment, see what compliance is needed, and manage all the applications for the permits and the licenses. And then really, so when you look at multinationals and what they're looking for is, as Dan and Kiera mentioned, a lot of them come and they demand that, or they ask if it's possible, if you can have a global footprint. So are you able to extend your services to a foreign country? And what we've seen is that if a reseller or anyone in the market is not able to provide what they term the DDP solution, this full door-to-door solution, they'll push back and find another reseller. So we become a very important partner with this global expansion. And to give you an idea of how over the last 5 years, it's really flourished in terms of companies moving, the multinational companies moving into the global the global market, is that 5 years ago, TechX, which is a subdivision of a very large VAT tax recovery company, started as a wholly owned division with about 15 people, and today we are sitting with over, almost close to 500 employees. So, and just continually expanding, just because of the fact that there is such a demand out there for this this global movement of equipment. And one of the reasons, a lot of people will say, well, why would it interest a multinational to purchase from one reseller or managed service provider or distributor in one country and move the goods? Does it not make more sense to purchase in the foreign country? So what we've seen is that very much a lot of multinationals are actually some prefer to look at locally in a foreign country, but for most, what they're looking is what's termed a local procurement and a global deployment. So they want to be able to purchase everything, or at least a good part of the equipment, from the reseller or the distributor or the OEM in the country where they're headquartered, where their budget lies, where they know who they're dealing with. It's the same language, it's the same currency. They don't have to go and look for a reseller in every single country that they're expanding into. And for a lot of these multinationals, they can be expanding into 70, 80 countries. So having to deal in 70, 80 countries with a foreign language, foreign currency, determine who is an honest reseller that they can deal with, becomes quite a momentous task. So that's why they much prefer this local procurement. The other thing, the ability it gives them is this uniformity. If you're purchasing in multiple countries, not every country has the same type of product, so it's not always available. And the other thing is that if it needs to be configured or staged, then it becomes very difficult to have uniformity across all the data centers or all the offices if you're going to purchase a product and then stage it or configure it in the foreign country. So what we've seen is that a lot of the bigger companies or multinationals prefer to buy in bulk and therefore get better pricing, configure everything uniformly, and then deploy to the foreign countries. And the other thing as well is that for most part, I think the biggest obstacle is that in order to purchase in a foreign country, you need to often have a registered entity there. for a lot of these multinationals, they don't have established registered entities, and they cannot import if you don't have a registered entity. So sometimes they're moving into a new country, so they want to do what's termed a proof of concept, where they want to see, will they be successful? Is there even a market to for their services in a foreign country? They definitely don't want to establish an entity. They don't want to invest too much until they know that there is a market. So in a situation like that, they for sure push back to the reseller to say, we want you to take care of the full door-to-door solution, be the importer of record. We don't want to have anything to do with it. We want you to just drop ship the equipment to the foreign country. So those are just high-level, ideas as to why a company, a multinational, would want to purchase locally and then have it globally deployed. And just to give you, the other thing I also want to emphasize is that TechX is not a freight forwarder. A lot of people feel like, okay, well, you can just do it via FedEx or your freight forwarder. Why do you need to have an importer of record company? Why is there this complexity surrounding the import? Just stick it in a FedEx box and it should be fine. So the biggest difference is that FedEx or UPS or DHL or any freight forwarder, they can manage the freight part, that is getting the equipment from one country to another. They will not act as a registered entity in the foreign country. I actually got an email today from a client who said they did not realize they were shipping to Japan. They did not realize an importer of record was needed. And FedEx came back to them to say the goods are stuck in customs because they need an importer of record. So FedEx or any of these couriers or freight forwarders will not act as a registered entity. In addition, they will not take care of the compliance or the permits or licenses. And if this is not followed, then it can get stuck in customs. So what happens is sometimes it will slip through, it can slip through customs without all the correct documentation. But for most part, it does tend to get stuck if it's not correctly deployed. And that can cost not only a client, because it can get stuck for months in customs, it can end up costing the customer a lot of money in penalties and fines. So for example, I had a client who shipped without TechX to Germany, and the goods, they did not have an importer of record. The goods got stuck, and the data center that it was meant to go to charged him $10,000 in penalties for every week that it was delayed. So at the end of 3 weeks, when we finally managed to get it unstuck for them, it was $30,000 just in penalties. So that is something that, as well, it's so important to really, if you're going to expand globally and going to offer a multinational this kind of service, it's so important to have the correct partners, because if it's not done properly, then what ends up happening is that it can get stuck. You can lose, it costs money. You can lose a client because lead times are not met. And for these multinationals, not having the data center or the office up and running, every day is a loss of revenue. So it's something that's really quite important. And, to end off with, a lot of people will turn around and say, okay, well, the big companies don't really, they have their own infrastructure, they have their own team, they don't actually need to have, they can do it themselves. Why do they need TechX? I want to give you an idea of some of the clients that we work with, who really make use of our services, and this is why they have successfully expanded globally. And you'll see that we deal across the entire channel. So we deal with OEMs. So some of our OEMs are Dell. We move Dell equipment on behalf of Dell, NetApp, Citrix. These are just a few of our OEMs that we deal with, that we help move equipment into some of their countries that they don't have entities in. On the distributor side, we work with Ingram Micro, Exclusive Networks, Arrow Electronics. These are all, bigger distributors. and even though they have, they're able to they have a distribution in most countries. Sometimes they'll get a client who turns around and says, I don't want to purchase from your distribution in the foreign country. I want it to be a local sale. So we want to purchase from you in the US and deploy. So these distributors will make use of a TechX model. The VARs and the resellers, Orange Business Services, Insight, HCL are, just a few, but we have about 800 or 900 resellers that we assist in global deployment. And on the end user side, which is really any multinational company who has the need to set up some form of data center or offices, we work with Uber, Netflix, Amazon, and Google and Microsoft. So again, it's really something that opens up a huge market. And to be able to expand a global footprint without the reseller or the OEM having to try and get the staff for it and the infrastructure to try offer a global solution. They can really do it without by partnering up. As Dan and Kiera said, the partners really make working together in true form partnership really make it possible to open up yourselves on a global scale. And the last thing, I know I did say it was the last thing, but one more point I wanted to just end off with is that I know that there are quite a few of the ASCDI partners who deal in refurbished and secondhand goods, is that what we see in the market as well is the shortage of equipment and the long lead times is pushing the bigger end users to look at purchasing secondhand equipment and refurbished equipment. And I've had actually in the last couple of months, these are my clients who deal in refurbished goods, come to us because they've got opportunities with larger end users, with multinationals who are purchasing the equipment from them and sending it to the data centers because they cannot afford to wait the long lead times to get the new equipment. So that's also this is a partnership that can really work both with new equipment as well as if you in the refurbished and secondhand equipment. So that's just high level. I hope that it's given you a little bit of an understanding of what we do, and just also that there is a world out there where there's just such opportunity for growth for your company and to really increase revenue. So if anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you, Joe.
Noah, thank you. Yeah, I remember when I was a reseller, and we do business internationally. A lot of times, we try to sell to somebody overseas, and we'd say, we're going to sell you this product, and it's FOB our warehouse. It's your responsibility to get it, into your country. And we'd sometimes lose the deal because they wanted it delivered to their country. We didn't have the availability of an importer of record, so I could see the value of your services. Especially now, the money's always in our business, the reselling business has really always been made on the buy. And what's happening now with the supply chain issues is you're looking all around the world to find equipment to fill your orders. So it requires sometimes buying things overseas, and again, needing a service like yours to kind of, get it in the door, if you will. So I can see the value that you bring to our membership.
Yeah, no, 100%.
A question. You mentioned about the risks of being an importer of record. What are they? What kind of risks does somebody, if they are the importer of record, what do they expose themselves to?
Sure. So that's a very good question, which often is misunderstood as to what the complexity and the risks associated with being an importer of record. So essentially what happens is that the importer of record, it has to be a registered entity in the foreign country and a tax-paying entity. And they are responsible to customs in that country for the import. And in most countries, it's minimum 5 years, often it's 10 years, even longer. And what that means is even if they're not the importer of record, even if they're not the owner of the goods, which we are third-party importers, so we are not the owner, they are still responsible to ensure that import does not land up in the wrong hands. So most of the time when you're importing, and again, I'd say most of these imports are not for resale, but it's rather for an end user to use the equipment for their own use. So it's when it comes in, it's often it has to state where it's going, what the purpose is, and if it moves locations or it's used for another purpose within a certain time period, it can be there can be fines and penalties levied on the importer of record. The other thing as well is that the value that these goods are declared when passing through customs is very important, because that's what customs levies the taxes on. So what happens is that you can be audited, an importer of record can be audited, again, 5 to 10 years depending on the country. And if they were not happy, if customs is not happy with the value of the equipment, then with the value that was declared, then they can increase the value and then obviously the taxes will increase. So we have been audited we get audited on a regular basis, and we take the responsibility, or the importer of record takes the responsibility of having to pay those taxes. In addition, is that if it's not imported correctly, and let's say, and we've had again where a client, forgot to put on the correct label or do not mark as we instructed, the goods get stuck, the importer of record runs the risk of losing its license. And if you lose your license or get blacklisted, it means that you either cannot import, or your license gets revoked, or it gets audited every single time you get in. So every shipment gets stuck, which is obviously something you don't want. And to get these licenses are not always such a simple task. So Joe, you had actually referred a company to us from the UK who was looking to export. They're a registered entity in the UK, but they were not able to obtain an export license, which incidentally, we do export of record services. It's the same story, is that if you're exporting out of a country, you need to have a registered entity and meet all the compliance aspects and requirements. So this company was not able, even though they registered, even though they are in the UK, there's a special license that's needed. It's very difficult to obtain, and it's a lengthy process. And they were able to, we have that license in place. So the risk is that if someone doesn't follow our instructions as well, and things end up leaving or get to customs and it's incorrect, we lose our license or we penalize. So those are, there's legal implications, tax implications, and all that surrounding import of record.
Thanks. Dan, I saw you pop up. Did you have a question okay? I do have just 2 more quick questions. Is any package, any shipment too small for you guys to handle? Is there a size limitation as to the kind of deal you want to work on?
So again, no size limitation. It's rather the type of product. So as long as it falls within the IT hardware, networking equipment, electronics, as long as it's within that realm, then we'll manage it irrespective of the size. And then we also actually have a vertical that does medical IR. But for this purpose, this forum, I think it's on the tech side. So it's not a size issue, because we know that sometimes we've seen with clients, they need a replacement part that may be valued at $50. I mean, I had a client come, they needed a cable, which wasn't very, high value at all. But if they cannot get that part in and their data center is down, then they're going to lose millions of dollars in revenue. So at the end of the day, it's not about the size, it's rather about the type of equipment going. So as long as it's equipment, electronics, our networking equipment, we don't mind if it's big or small.
Okay, great. I have one more, but anybody else questions? Feel free to turn on your camera. Kiera, go ahead.
Yeah. Noah, so how do you control the value of a used equipment, or how do you check it? Because in my experience, sometimes when we ask our client, what's the value of your equipment? They go, oh, thousands, 200,000. And then when we apply tax to it, nothing, is worth nothing.
Yeah. No, I've seen that a lot. It's like suddenly devalued too. So it really depends on the country. Certain countries are not as sticky when it comes to the valuation. And you can even turn around and say, okay, well, this is the purpose that it's used for, and that's not an issue. There's other countries such as Brazil, India, Philippines, amongst a few others that are very particular about the value coming in. And in fact, they'll bump up secondhand or refurbished to market value. So what we do is our team in the country, because we have localized teams in the different countries, they will actually work with customs to see what the value looks like, because you don't want to give the wrong value, because if you bring the wrong value, then you also can be penalized. So we got a compliance team. What we'll do is that we don't allow anything to ship until our compliance team has actually reviewed the bill of materials and the commercial invoice. And then we'll draft the commercial invoice and the documents as well. So if the value looks questionable, we'll raise it. And we'll often, if it's a country where we know that revaluation is an issue, we'll get our local team in country to actually work with customs to see, what was it imported in a previous time, or what's the market related value. But you are correct. A lot of people, as soon as they hear taxes and they see the connection, then suddenly there's not a high value given to the product.
Thank you.
Noah, what country is the hardest to import into that you've dealt with?
So I'd say I'd break it up into two things: the hardest and the most expensive. So on the most expensive side, for sure, Brazil, because Brazil really tries very hard to discourage imports and to foster, local purchasing and local buying. So their taxes are incredibly high, and they have so many different taxes that are levied on products. They've also got a lot of complexities around the compliance. So, and then also even the local delivery, because of the fact that it's not such a safe country, when we do the local delivery, it has to be done with security and all that. So I would say Brazil definitely tops for the most expensive. The most challenging, I think it depends on the type of equipment. I would say India is definitely up there. I recently had I work with a FedEx, someone who works, she's a FedEx sales rep for international, and she actually said to me recently that it's become so difficult for them that even when they have, their client is registered in India and can be the importer record, that she automatically says go to TechX. So India lately has become quite sticky. They've always been difficult, but they've got quite a few permits in place and certifications and restrictions on secondhand goods. So I would say that India is definitely up there. But then again, it also they're complex.
Wait, Noah,
I'd say easier, but they still, have a complexity surrounding them. Are going to be your European country, your regular European countries, the UK, Canada, USA, Australia, countries like that.
Noah, thank you. Neil, go ahead.
Actually, sorry, one more. I'd say that at the top, India, I would say Egypt, actually. Egypt and Saudi Arabia are right up there with them.
So this is Gary Answered. I have a question for you, Noah. I've tried to use you guys in the past, but I'm trying to be delicate about this, but you guys were extremely expensive, and it made it very difficult for us to use your service and to use any kind of import export to help this customer, because it just wasn't economical. I mean, maybe it's just a one-time bad experience, but I'd like you to talk a little bit about your pricing, how it compares in the marketplace, all those things, because at the end of the day, if we're not profitable and it's not effective for our customers financially, your service is not going to be helpful to us. And so I do global projects all the time, and you guys were more than twice of what other competitors were coming in at. I'm just curious if you can expand on that. I know it's kind of a weird question here in this forum, but
So Gary, it's nice to meet you, and it's a very fair question. So I'll tell you, I don't know. Firstly, we'll start with that. I don't know how long ago you did try to use TechX, but when we were starting out, obviously we did not have the infrastructure, the size that we have now. So, and we were kind of just starting out in new lanes and building up the infrastructure. So we have streamlined a lot of our fees. And the other thing I think as well, so that's firstly, so the fee structure and the costs are much better than they were, quite a few years ago. The other thing as well, which is very important to understand, is that when you're doing a full door-to-door solution, there are a lot of different line items. So the only TechX fee is the import of record fee. That's the fee, which is a risk-based fee, and it's country dependent. So obviously, depending on which country, it's going into what's the risk for TechX, what's the complexity. So the rest of the line items on our quotes and invoices, which by the way, it's very transparent, is they all are what you would be incurring anyway to do a global deployment. So these are on charges. So these would be the freight, the clearance, the brokerage, the licenses, the taxes. These are not where TechX is actually making money. These are just on charges. With that said, it's very important to always, what we found is that sometimes a company doesn't understand, they're comparing us to, let's say, Expediter quote, without realizing that Expeditors is only doing the freight and not all the extended services. So I always say it's important to jump on a call, always happy to do that. And I've seen it makes a huge difference that to explain the different costings and why they're there. What's the value add? The other thing also, what's very important is that again, we are not a UPS, we're not a FedEx, we're not a vendor, we're more of a partner. So what will happen is sometimes a quote will be pulled right when the goods are about to be shipped, and it's then given to the end user. So the end user had already a budget in place, and now suddenly, because the salesperson did not realize that it's an integral part, the DDP cost by the time you add everything in does add up. It's an integral part of the early discussion. It derails the deal. So we find that getting involved in the early stages, very early stages, negotiating, working with the end users, getting them to understand what the complexity is about, what the risks are about, goes a long way in getting it over the line. The other thing also is that all the costs are passed on to the end user. And yes, and what's very important to see as well is that sometimes the shipments, especially if it's low value, may look to be expensive in relation to the actual product because it's hitting minimum cost. But when it's taken to the company and it's seen on an operational level, on a business level, the cost of getting the equipment there may be X, but the cost of not having the equipment there is going to be far larger than the cost of shipping it there. So that's another factor. So it's very much how it's presented to the client, that they understand what the costs are. And the other thing also, we'll do project based. So if you have, it's a customer who's got multiple locations, or they're doing a project, a rollout, we'll definitely work with them to see if we can base it, get the costing right for them. But I think the most important thing is upfront, so that they often budget for these things. So if it's done
No,
too late,
I don't want to cut you short, but I want to squeeze in one last question. Neil, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Noah, you mentioned earlier, issues with commercial invoices, and sometimes, the vendor undervalues the equipment. My experience at ASCDI and with my own company, wearing a number of different hats. One of them is chairman of the anti-counterfeit committee for ASCDI. One of the red flags that we see with a vendor in terms of either potential counterfeiter or unethical practices is the consistent, undervaluation of items on a commercial invoice to try to, evade, customs duties, that sort of thing. Have you noticed a correlation between, companies that undervalue items on a commercial invoice and, lack of ethics or counterfeiting, or do you think it's they're just being sloppy? Because doing that to evade, ignorance is not a defense, as we all know. And anyway, we found that there's a real high correlation between, shady characters and undervaluing items on a commercial invoice.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I'd say a lot of our clients, especially our end users, are companies that have a very high standard and ethical, some of them are publicly traded companies. They have all this anti-corruption and ethical practices in place. So it's more coming from that they getting a great deal on a bulk discount. So the cost of the equipment is coming in very cheaper than you get a market value, and it's going into a country that wants market value. So we'll see that. So they will go back and explain that even though you're getting the discount, and that's why it's coming. You have a low value on a commercial invoice. It's not for the country going into. It needs to be bumped up. So, and the other times is that sometimes we'll get test equipment going in, or we'll get a client saying to us, "There's no value," or "There's low value," because it's going in for testing, it's going in for a trade show, and then I realize that that's irrelevant when it's passing through customs. You still have to pay taxes and duties. And then sometimes it comes on refurbished and secondhand goods, that it could very well be that that's the value given, but that's on their box, but it's not the value that's acceptable by customs. So we will generally, in most countries, if the value does look a little bit like it doesn't correlate to the goods going in, we will just ask them to double check. Again, because of the type of caliber of end users that we deal with, we don't generally see shady stuff. I think you do get that from time to time, but most of it, I think, just the nature of how the actual transaction has been set up, or what's sitting on their box, the value that's sitting on their box.
Good. Thank you.
Great. Noah, Dan, Kiera, thank you. And everybody, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. We'll be in person in about 2 weeks in Minnesota. Hopefully, if anybody's nearby Minnesota, we'd love to have you join us. If not, we have the next webinar coming up in September. And look forward to seeing you on that one. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day. And thanks for your support of ASCDI.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And Joe, if I could just say, sorry, Joe, if I could just say as well that I'm very happy I know that there were some questions or maybe questions that aren't answered. If anyone wants to reach out, I'm happy to answer questions, on a call or on email, or
And we'll be sharing the recording of today with everybody who's registered, so you all get a copy of it. And along with that, Noah, we'll share everybody's contact information, your contact information, so they'll make sure to know how to get hold of you.
Okay, perfect. All right, Joe, thank you for the opportunity.
Noah, thank you. XSI, you guys are great. Thank you. Everybody, thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Joe.
You too.
Guys, take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.